important to know your costs if you're going to make any decisions for capital expenditure. So we, code out each job each week and how many hours, and so that we know what our costs are. It's important to understand the seasonality of your operation, and it's also important to understand the limitations of your site, your varieties, your trellis. Randy, very, very important to understand the limitations of your trellis, and your current equipment. Like what are your current tractors? What's the horsepower, the oil flow? These sorts of things are really important to know if you're looking to mechanize or mechanize particular operations. For our system in November, I have to come up with a Vineyard budget that's cash flow budget. I have to do this for, I think it's 11 or 12 sites for each month, and what the costs will be for each line item, whether it be pruning, brush pulling, mowing, hedging, leaf pulling, catch wires, all that stuff. And I'm fortunate that we track that each year, so I have 4 years of data to look at in my spreadsheets and go, okay, this is when I think it's going to land in the season for an average year, and this is what I think the costs are going to be. We're looking to mechanise this operation, so hopefully we'll be able to get that cost down. And so each week my guys, we use a program called iCropTrack, which is used to, we use it for scouting. We've got all our maps, we do our spray work orders, we enter our timesheets for our base crew and also for our contract labour. And then from there we generate reports weekly to send to finance. They update the budget once a month. It's usually about 3 weeks late. So I can never rely on my cash flow budget for actuals because I'm already 3 weeks ahead in operation. So having iCropTrack is really important for me to keep on top of where we land in our budget with hours and costs, and I convert our own crews hours to costs and our contract crews hours to costs by operation. So I know where I stand in my budget, and that way I can give updates to the guys like, hey, we've got, you got 20 hours left on crop thinning. I don't use it in these 2 blocks, and then after that we have to call it quits. This is iCropTrack. There's a timesheet function. Do I have a pointer here, Andy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Red button towards the top should be a laser pointer.
Okay, cool. And that's just a map of one of our vineyards. We have our own team of guys that manage our organic and biodynamic properties for the Rex Hill program, and then we outsource management to regional vineyards where our crew sort of isn't typically working, and those are primarily A to Z vineyards where we're using management companies.
Hey, Ryan?
Yeah.
On the iCropTrack, do you enter all the data, or do your crews enter the data into
our manager enters the data. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I would like to get it to. I mean, we have a crew of 5 guys, so it doesn't take him very long. And then him and the Jorge and Martin supervises the crews. He then gives him the contract labour's hours to enter, and it's a really quick process. This is essentially what the weekly report looks like. This is the activity summary for June 7th to 13th last year. You can see all the different sort of job codes that are in there for the different ranches. There was a little bit of winery work. There's also some capital work on some development blocks here, and then someone took a day off. Here's essentially, from that data, I can show you the labour cycle for our properties, and below this red line is our own crew that work 12 months in a year. They're salaried, they get paid time off, they get vacation, which they usually take in December. Above this line is contract labour. And so we have to supplement our labour needs with contract labour, which is getting less reliable, less productive, and it's not really It's not a great benefit, but we need it to farm to the level that we want to in these properties, and to farm the system that we're farming, which is a high input VSP system for growing Pinot Noir, and it's not necessarily the best system, but it's So here's, again, some of these operations: leaf removal, hedging, pre-pruning, brush removal for cane pruning. You can also think about multiple implements. That's just more for greater efficiency. So having a three-point linkage on the front of your tractor, maybe it's a 3-point with a PTO, or you've just got a hydraulic system up there, so you can do 2 operations at once. That's not so much about reducing your sort of reducing your labour, but just improving the efficiencies of your operator, because we're talking about a tractor operation which they don't really cost much, and you can get a lot done with one person. What we're really challenged with is doing field work, hand labour. So this is a bonus, but it's not going to make or break your operation. But it could be something that is quite affordable for you to do to improve the efficiencies. So you remove that mowing pass by mowing and spraying at the same time, or maybe you're doing your weed strip or doing your grape hoe and you're mowing at the same time. Simple jobs that don't require a lot of attention. It's those. You can put a mower behind a tractor and drive, and you don't really need to look at the mower until it makes a bad noise. So it's trying to just take out some small costs. Is a lot of people are thinking about chemical suckering or mechanical suckering now, because it's suckering's one of those jobs which is really hard on the crew, and you would probably prefer to be doing other tasks in your vineyard at that time, like raising wires, than taking off suckers. And so it's like, where do you use your labour, and what's most important to do by hand, and what can you do with the machine?
That's a good question on the chemical suckering, which that's not permitted by law.
Yep. Yeah. I think you can use, is it AIM or Goal or something like that? Yeah.
I thought it was. Okay, so because we've actually been spraying AIM for morning glory.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking with Antonio about this. When you go and you chemically sucker, do you find that you're getting secondaries pushing you?
Oh, we don't do it. It's just an option. I honestly don't like the job that it does.
Yeah. Yes, I mean they don't stay gone as well as if you would by hand.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't like the job that it does. I feel like you just end up with more suckers year in, year out. So you end up with this just burly mess down there. So, and then there's also, obviously machine harvesting, wire lifting and or chute binders. We're going to be trialling one of the Clemens chute binding tools that runs twine out, lifts the chutes and staples them. I'll take some videos. If it works, I'll send the videos through. If it doesn't, you won't hear about it.
Wires? Is that?
It has essentially baling twine, and then it raises the. What's that?
Plastic?
I'm assuming it would be. It has these sort of lifting mechanisms that go over the row that have like a sort of pulley and paddle system that when the chutes are sort of out in the row, they sort of catch them on the paddles and lift them up like a conveyor, and then the twine goes either side and is stapled together as it goes past. It looks like it could work. What I'm looking for is, during this peak labour period is when a lot of our growers are struggling to get things done. Like they want a leaf, they want a shoot position, and they want to raise the last catch wire all at the same time. And when we have the least amount of people and our least productive people, so maybe this could take care of the final wire lift while the crews of do a shoot position pass in front of that. But the problem I have is this machine needs to be run at the same time as my mechanical leaf remover. It can mount on the same mast, but it means I'm probably going to need, or if someone's mechanical leafing and wants to do this, they're going to need another tractor that can operate it. Do they need to make that capital expense? And then so it's sort of, that's when you need to start having greater economies of scale. Like you have more acres where you can have a guy dedicated to just, doing those, that operation for a month. I mean, for our mechanical leaf removal, we ran it over 150 acres in the first year, and we paid for it in 1 year. But that guy's running it from as soon as bloom ends at our low elevation sites through to, almost veraison at our high elevation sites. So we need that separation of sites to get the job done at the right time for every vineyard, and it doesn't necessarily always happen because you have breakdowns. And this thing just frickin' eats pencil rod, by the way. Yeah, but we've dialed it in so you can adjust it so that when something thicker than X goes through, it'll stop. But we had it dialed up so it was just like it wouldn't stop. We were doing a hell of a job leaf pulling until we sucked in pencil rod twice. So, I think it's important, like once you know your costs and your operation and the seasonality of your operation and what your limitations are with either your workforce, your site, your current equipment, you then need to look at doing a cost-benefit analysis. So you want to look at your current costs, which you already have. What is the total for the year? What are the total number of acres and your cost per acre? And then what is the operation you want to mechanise? What is that capital outlay? I'm not going to talk about the financing of this because I don't deal with the financing. I pitch these to the finance department and they tell me how much I get to spend. So you guys probably who are own and operate vineyards have a better idea of how to finance things for the farm than I do. So. Yeah. So you need obviously a depreciation cycle. Is it a 5 or a 10 year? For things like a leaf puller, we're doing like a 5-year depreciation cycle. For something like a machine harvester, we're probably looking at a 10-year depreciation cycle. You then want to know what's your operating costs for labour and fuel, and then you want to really sort of estimate your operating rate. How many acres can you do in an hour? And then what is your expected repairs and maintenance on that to really determine what the true operating cost is. And it's not just repairs and maintenance of the tool that you're running, but also your tractor. I think it's like the Iowa State University has like an awesome website on tractor financing and their repairs and maintenance over the lifespan of that tractor and how it increases over time and what percentage of the tractor's value is then put into repairs and maintenance at X number of hours. So I think it's for a four-wheel drive tractor at 6,000 hours. It's something like 25. You would spend 25% of the capital expense on repairs and maintenance by the time you hit 6,000 hours. So you can kind of predict, obviously it's going to increase. It's sort of a curve that goes like this. So the more hours you put on the tractor, the more it breaks and the more you spend in repairs. So you need to, I've just thrown it out there I put down something like $1 an hour or something for 6,000 hours. Let's say it's a $50,000 tractor. 25% of that is $12.50 over 6,000 hours. That's $2. That's $2 an hour. So $2 an hour repairs and maintenance for the machine, for the tractor, and then you've got the repairs and maintenance on the machine.
Hey Ryan, I'm just curious with your Clemens leaf, how many acres were you guys doing?
We did. We're doing about 130 now, high-end sites and like our super premium sites and our A to Z sites, and it costs us about $36 an acre to do it with a machine, and it costs us $300 an acre to do it by hand.
Yeah.
So here is essentially like a cost benefit for a mechanical leafer. This is pretty true, pretty accurate for our operation. One thing to note, cost per acre, I'm just using it because it's the simplest way of talking about grapes, but it is not necessarily the most accurate way of talking about the economics of vineyards. We have vineyards that are 5.5 feet row width and 3.5 feet vine spacing, and we have vineyards that are 10 feet row width and 6 and 7 feet vine spacing. There are only a couple of jobs that you can really say that they are done on a vine, purely like a cost per vine. That's pruning, suckering, and head thinning. And then for everything else besides tying canes, that comes down to the number of canes. The cost per cane is somewhere around 10 or 11 cents, or it was in 2012 when I did a cost analysis. Everything else comes down to a cost per mile. When I broke down our sites, we were looking at very high labour costs and costs on our high density vineyards and low on our lower density vineyards. Once I broke it down to cost per mile, everything was within a $500 range on a cost per mile basis, like over 10 sites. It was amazing how you could break it down to that one metric of its cost per mile. But for the sake of this, we're going to talk about cost per acre, and I've digressed a little. So,
is that just leafing one side?
Yeah, just leafing one side, just the morning side. So here we have the capital expense, $22,000, 5-year depreciation. This is really a fixed cost that's on your budget in your depreciation line. And then here's your operating costs of operator per cost, fuel. These are some just sort of estimates, but they hold pretty true for us. And you can see, okay, if I do 0 acres, this is my fixed cost, which is the depreciation. If I do 5 acres, I'm at $1,500 by hand and $4,580 by machine. Well, there's the equation. Here's the cost benefit for mechanical leaf removal, as long as you have the tractor that can do the job already and it's not committed to something else. The break-even point for us right now, for our operation at $300 an acre, is right around 17 acres. And so when we did 150 acres in the first year, we saved something like $30,000. And the machine cost us $22,000. And so there is, when I did a cost benefit analysis on, it's like 5 different pieces of machinery, mechanical leaf removal was the one that had the greatest cost benefit, and I also felt like it could help take the peak out of our labour demand. So really important. I think this is, as long as you're removing leaves in your operation, this is a great tool. If you're not removing leaves in your operation, it's a terrible tool.
Right. So,
yeah.
So you're using a leafer on your high-end side?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's adequate.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. We, I think the keys for the success for this job are really, well-managed vines, so they're nice and straight. You don't have wonky trunks and big burly heads. You need to have good head thinning and good shoot thinning. And we like to do our shoot positioning pass right after bloom, and then we do our leaf removal pass right after that. Everything's tight, and the leaves are just sort of sitting out, and you nip the ends of clusters, but we just spent $500 an acre in crop. We spent $500 an acre in crop thinning. The amount of crop that we're trying to get out of these sites is low. At the lower end, it's 2.5 to 3 tons an acre, and so removing the tip of a cluster on every 5 vines isn't that important to us. It's about getting the job done and getting it done at the right time so it does the best job. We'll always do like a little bit of a cleanup when we're crop thinning, but in these warm seasons I haven't been as concerned about getting more exposure. If anything, we're looking to ensure that we don't have overexposure. So we go pretty slow with our machine. We do 1 acre an hour. That's all in, our tractor speed's faster than that. But overall, the work rate's 1 acre an hour, and we do a really good job. And so we're really happy with it. So that's hand versus mechanical leaf removal.
Sorry, one more question with
Yep.
leaf removal. So in terms of the actual reality on the ground, what is sort of your goals? I mean, so you're removing, let's say, I don't know, bottom 3 leaves?
Yeah, we're just trying to do the fruit zone.
Yeah.
We run it just below, right at we take off about that much.
Yep,
That's all we do.
pretty much everything.
Yep.
And
Yeah, close to.
How do laterals end up playing into that at all?
They'll often get pulled if they're pushed already, but
Like, do you have a lot of stuff come back because of laterals, or?
we have a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I think it's timing. If you remove leaves earlier in the season, you're going to get laterals push. But like I was saying, I'm not as concerned, particularly in the warmer seasons, with some lateral development in the fruit zone. And
Well, it could even be good where you get some early exposure and
yeah,
a little protection.
and then a little more coverage later. So
Did you guys consider getting that little hedge or attachment on the plant?
they didn't have that when we purchased it. It wasn't an option. So, but I think it's a great idea if you do have laterals pushing and you're getting in later in the season, and you can take those laterals off and then pull, because otherwise you're just going to be pulling. You've got to get through that lateral to get to the leaves behind. So
the main thing we saw with the demo was the laterals getting pulled over the leaves, and then the actual leafing being very varied throughout because of that.
yeah, for sure. So timing's really important with this.
Right after bloom.
Yeah, and these are organic sites where I need to get leaves off. I need penetration. I need coverage, and it's really imperative that we get them off right away. So that's essentially what we do. Not every site gets it done right after bloom, because we've got to get around like 130, 140 acres these days with this machine. Here's just
You're looking at it like 15 or 16 days to get it all done.
Oh, more than that. By the time we move from site to site, and then we have breakdowns, we're talking the better part of like 3, 4 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many breakdowns have you had with the leafer itself?
When it eats pencil rod, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the first year it went like a dream, Second year we had a few hurdles. Third year we started eating pencil rod, and the fourth year we got it really well serviced beforehand. David Myers came out, dialed it in, and last year it just like went like a dream again, So it's about getting the setup right at the start of the season. We also got a new tractor for it to operate on. That was part of the breakdowns in previous years. We had a Lemondini, and it would break down like every week. It's freaking awful. We now got a great New Holland, which is broken down as well. It's a great tractor. It just has something wrong with the hydraulics right now. That's farming though. So here is a mock-up of hand harvesting versus mechanical harvesting. These numbers I came up with this morning as an estimate. I think you could probably develop more accurate numbers for operating costs by talking to vendors. I've thrown out 350. I think the Pelong Selective's like 400, but I was hoping to maybe get a deal on it. And then we've got down acres here. This is at a hand harvesting cost that's probably more in line with the Rogue Valley, which is about $150 a tonne, somewhere around there. That's on the low side. Oh, good to hear, because we're paying like $250 up north. So, and here's your operating rate of an acre an hour. That's what people sort of anticipate. I haven't put in like cleaning, spending 2 hours cleaning after the job, but this is purely the hand harvesting, and this is purely the harvesting by a machine, you're still going to need tractors doing your operations. That's not included. But this is for removing the grapes off the vine as a direct comparison. And this is it based at 3 tonnes an acre, 4 tonnes an acre, and 5 tonnes an acre. And with machine harvesting, you're really not going to see a lot of difference in your work rate. I mean, you'll see a little bit because you've got to empty the tanks, or if you've got a side discharge, the work rate's going to be the same. Here's the cost benefit. So let me go back. So I did a 10-year depreciation. So the annual depreciation is $35,000 a year. Here's your acres going up to 100 acres. If you're at 5 tonnes an acre, you could potentially be seeing a cost benefit somewhere around, I don't know, what is that, 60 acres? You could potentially see a cost benefit where you could potentially justify the capital expense, as long as your bank's willing to lend you money, of buying a machine harvester. Now, if you look at some of the machine harvesters are only $200,000. Like a Pelonk Selective, like toe behind, is $200,000. That's a starting off down here with your fixed cost of depreciation here, and then following that same line. So it's hard to justify at 3 tonnes an acre a $350,000 capital expense if your picking costs are only $150 a tonne. Now, if your picking costs are like ours in the Willamette Valley and you're at $250 a tonne, then it becomes a lot easier to justify the capital expense. Now, I wouldn't take these numbers I have to the bank right now. I think they need some fine-tuning. But you can see if you did this for yourself, understanding your operation, what your yield expectations are, and how many acres you have, you would see a similar trend and come up with similar scenarios. Where these intersect is going to shift. Maybe it's slightly out a little bit, but then if you buy a machine that isn't $350,000, you're going to see this intersection lower. But that's given that you can get a machine like that into your vineyard. You've got the headlands, your trellis systems equipped. So there is, as we see labour prices go up, and as we see the picking costs go up, you can start to see the justification for a large capital expense in a machine harvester. And it's not 300 to 1,000 acres. We're looking at under 100 acres for potentially justifying that capital expense at our current picking costs.
Mm-hmm. Right, on your previous slide there, it looked like, one more back. Yeah. So your operating cost is $160.
Yeah. So, and I'm predicting that, this is an expensive machine. It's going to need quite a lot of repairs and maintenance. Fuel, I guessed it, $40 an hour. It's going to use a lot of diesel, surely. And then the operator at $30 an hour. So you've got a very skilled operator in there, and a work rate. And I know, Mike Freeman, he can pick nearly two acres an hour. I don't like it when he picks that fast, but a good work rate is an acre an hour, which can be, 5 tonnes an acre, 5 tonnes an hour, or it's and whenever I talk to someone who's gone to machine harvesting, they talk about the simplification of their life at harvest time and managing, I know, Michael, you love your crew and you've got a big crew and you employ a lot of people, but managing 3 people versus 70 is a whole new paradigm, and it means that they can sleep at night and they can, it's a lot easier. And you've got a crew that can pick 24 hours in the day. That's what you've got. So if you need to get a lot of work done, if all your grapes are ripening at the right time and you've got rain in the forecast or extreme heat or something, or a winery who wants you to pick it all in 4 days, you can potentially get it done, whereas getting it done under the current paradigm is getting harder and harder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was curious, I was talking with David Myers about the harvesters, and one of the things that he had said was that they're breaking down, the ones that they have, which may be older ones, they said they're just like breaking down all the time. That's been a real issue. And I would think especially down here, because I'm guessing up in Willamette you can
Yeah.
get it fixed quickly down
hard.
here. It's
No.
hard.
Yeah, it is.
So you
Yeah.
guys, for the harvester, these numbers you're running here, just doing this as an example.
Yeah, yeah.
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 So to follow up on that model, because you have it by acres, that's assuming all like 100 acres or 50 acres that you're going to pick all at once.
No, you don't need to pick it all at once. I mean, you don't need to pick, this is purely like what your cost would be if you hand harvest at 1 acre
Yeah.
or 10, irrespective of the time, or you use your machine to do it.
Yeah, because it's and one of the things I was thinking is that and I haven't really looked into this yet,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's one of these things out in the future at some point. But again, with lots of small blocks, there's some size where it becomes economical.
Yeah.
So the larger the size block, the larger
Yeah.
it becomes economical. Have you kind of looked at this in your operation in terms of like what's the smallest size before at what size the cleaning time and the transportation?
I think you'd want to be picking at least, from a winery standpoint, you'd want to be picking at least a truckload to a couple of truckloads, 20 to 40 tons at a time. Otherwise, you get the machine going and then, you run it for 2 hours. Let's say you're picking 10 tons, you run it for 2 hours or 3 hours, and then you're cleaning it for 2 hours.
Right.
And that's just worthless. We have a 2-acre vineyard where it takes us more time to drive there to do the operation than it does to do the operation. So the cost of the operation is double. So you want to make sure that, you're picking enough in a day to justify starting the machine. Otherwise, you've got, your crew, which can go out and pick 10 tons, no worries. And I think in your operation, you always have hand picking because of the way that your vineyards are laid out and the varieties, the number of varieties on a ranch. I think you'll always have, hand picking will always be a part of your world. It just
For
will.
something like what they do, the only way it would really make sense is if they own their own, because
Yeah.
not hiring somebody.
Yeah.
And then, then it's more than just what it costs. It then becomes really a question of whether or not you can get the people that you need in the future to pick when you need them and stuff like that. It wouldn't make sense to have a contractor come in and do a vineyard that was like that, where it was all a bunch of small blocks.
No.
Your own equipment.
Yeah. Yeah, you can move it from ranch to ranch to ranch and just drive it around. But it also, one thing I will mention is all of these operations present growth opportunities for people. Getting someone onto a tractor, a lot of people see as that's a growth opportunity for them, from being a hand worker to now I'm getting paid a little more. I'm operating a tractor. I'm proud of my tractor. This is and I run the leafing and I've got pride in my job. And then the same goes for running a harvester. Like, that's a big step up in their role and the responsibility that they have. So it does present growth opportunities for people, and I think that is often missed in the fact that you could employ a lot of people doing repetitive work, but you can also employ fewer people who are paid more and often have a greater skill set that could be translated across more areas of agriculture if they wanted to get out of grapes and wanted to get into combining or whatever it is. There are growth opportunities there.
It's a really good point, but a thought that I had just a few minutes ago is, one of the shortages we sometimes run into is actually finding qualified tractor drivers.
Yep.
It's sometimes a lot easier to find hand labor than
Sure.
to find somebody who's sort of capable of operating.
Yeah, well, you need to build them into, train them and build them into your crew, and build them into your full-time crew. That's, very, very important for, but a lot of people are having the same problem, but it's just coming down to training. It's hard to get a job when you don't have experience in the job. When you come straight out of high school or college and you try and get a job with your degree that's meant to propel your career and you have zero experience, it's hard to break in. It's hard to break into any industry. So giving people the opportunity and teaching them and training them can be really beneficial and can make them, loyal to you, especially if you present, that this is going to be, this is what you're going to be doing year in, year out. And in the winter you're going to prune, but then you're going to be operating tractors all summer long. And maybe in 2 years I'll train you to run the machine harvester, and, maybe they'd be terrified, like me when I was operating harvesters. But it is presents opportunities. So A to Z's perspective on mechanisation, it's the reality. It's the new norm for the US, but it's the US has been in a fortunate position as a first world country that has had a very, very large population of low paid field workers. No other first world country in the world has had this paradigm for a long time. So mechanisation is happening all over the world in every fine wine region you can think of, from Bordeaux to Burgundy, to probably even Champagne. People are 90% of the grapes in France are machine harvested. So it's the new norm. We have to do more with less, and we have to do the same amount with less. And I see it as, coming from a country that has had low or high labour rates. I mean, you want to talk $14, $13 an hour for labour in Oregon? Try and pay $20 an hour in Australia. That's even when I was 17 and working in the vineyards, I was getting paid $16.50 an hour back in 1999. That's still going to be higher than what you're going to be paying in 2020. Like 20 years later. So this is, America's just coming into the 21st century like everyone else did in the 20th, at the start of the 20th century. So we as Michael mentioned, we can't just jack up our prices of grapes and jack up our bottle prices, because the consumers won't accept that, and the people who hold their price and find ways to adapt to the labour market will stay in business and can still be successful, and you can still produce really quality wine. And so it's about, that's our perspective, and that's my perspective, because I'm not from here. I haven't grown up with, big crews. I mean, at our company, we value our people. They're one of our greatest assets, and we invest a lot in training and we pay our guys well, and they get paid time off, and they get bonuses when we have good crops, and they get health benefits. So there's ways to make it work, and some of it, Michael, is like what you mentioned. It's like maybe you do everything by hand so you can market your grapes for a higher price, and that people, as long as people are willing to pay that's an option. But for a lot of people, it's just trying to maintain market share in the wine market, and maintain your economics in the winery and the vineyard. So onto machine harvesting. This is the keys for machine harvesting is the right vineyard, a good operator, and for us it's onboard sorting. Onboard sorting is something that makes a huge difference to the quality of what's landing on the crush pad. I think picking when it's cool is really important for whites. It means there's a lot less oxidation. Minimising the time from pick to arriving at the winery is key. So we often have, with some of our growers, contractual expectations from start of pick to time to the crush pad, that they have less than 12 hours to do it, to get a truck from the start of the pick to the crush pad, and they can do it. It's just as long as the truck doesn't break down, or the harvester, which happens. But it's important, and in particular for whites. For reds, I'm not as concerned about reds sitting on skins, because they do that in tank. But for whites, they pick up phenolics, they pick up colour, particularly with Pinot Gris, and it means that we're going to have to fine a lot harder to remove the colour and the phenolics in the juice when it lands after it's been pressed. I think it's also really important to train your winemakers not to compare hand-picked fruit with machine-harvested fruit, because machine-harvested fruit has been processed, it's been destemmed, and no winemaker's going from going to the tank, looking in the tank after hand-harvested fruit has been destemmed and pumped into the tank and going, wow, that looks juicy, and then walking out to the machine-harvested fruit and going, yeah, that's just as juicy. They're going, oh, that looks sloppy and that's got juice in there, but the only thing that's comparable to machine-harvested fruit is the fruit that's gone through a destemmer and is in a tank. And so it's really important to change their expectations as to what it looks like in the bin, because it's totally different. It's been through a process. It's been through the destemming process. It's also really important when you have machine harvested fruit that's being sorted on board. They have tanks on board that hold the grapes until the end of the row or they're full. When they're being dumped into the Oregon standard bin, which is a macro 24, it takes 2 of those bins to receive all of the fruit that comes out of one of those tanks. When the tank tips to dump, the first thing that comes out is juice. The second thing that comes out is grapes. And so you have, in the first bin, it always looks like there's a really high amount of juice. But with the second bin, looks like there's a really high amount of skins. This is probably the second bin. You can see there's a really high amount of berries. There's not a lot of juice. And it's the sum of the two is how much juice there is. Joey Myers from Vine Tenders, Joel Myers' son, David Myers' brother, he did a study, he looked at, we're going to look at how many whole berries do I get from our Pelonc Selective versus how many whole berries do I get through a standard destemmer, which was a Delta E2 by Vasson Booker. There was more whole berries coming out of their machine harvester than there was coming out of their destemmer. So when winemakers complain about how much juice there is in Pinot Noir, and juice is created from machine harvesting in Pinot Noir, they're not comparing how much juice is created when they destem it, which is, in the winery process of destemming, is a violent process of destemming. They're literally beating the clusters around until the berries come off. Machine harvesting is causing the clusters to go from one direction to go from left to right, and it's that change in the direction which causes the berries to detach. It's not beating the berries off the cluster, it's the physics of the change in direction which causes the berries to come off. So you have actually a more gentle destemming process with machine harvesting. What has given machine harvesting a bad rap in the past is MOG, is pedioles, leaves, canes. I've seen frickin' pigeons, I've seen snakes, I've seen other sorts of marsupials I'm not going to name come out through machine harvesters. It's not pretty, but with onboard sorting, you don't have that. Yeah. I couldn't believe it when I was driving a tractor. It was a side discharge back in 2004 in McLaren Vale, and I just see I'm watching. They're picking into a 2-ton bin. It's discharging in, and I just see this pigeon just frickin' land, and I'm like, and then it just shakes itself and it flies off. I'm like, how did you just? And then there was a frilled neck lizard in there. That was pretty scary, and so you don't get that stuff. I mean, you don't get that stuff in Oregon, and then you don't get it through machines that do onboard sorting. So this is essentially a machine harvested fruit. This is a different bin than before. You can see how little MOG there is in there. There's a couple of small petiole fragments. There's a tiny little bit of leaf fragment here and here. But really, this is this is really good. This is what we want every sort of bin to look like. And you can also already see the juice is is black. This is 2015 for you. You know, there's so much colour in the fruit in 2015. This is Chardonnay picked with a machine through a selective process. This is like Chardonnay picks like a dream. The last slide was Pinot Noir, and people who tell you can't pick Pinot Noir with a machine, they haven't obviously had any experience with it. But Chardonnay is great. You get so many whole berries, and it picks really clean. It picks clean off the vine. It picks clean into the bin. So we really like it. Pinot Gris is similar to Pinot Noir. You know, that for us is, you know, time from pick to process is the most important thing with Pinot Gris. This is what we don't want it to look like. This has gone through a machine that does not have onboard sorting. So if anyone tries to tell you that, you know, this machine is just as good and it's got its 4 fans on there and they just pull everything, you know, pull all the stuff out, this is what it looks like. And you're not going to have a happy viticulturist or winemaker on the phone if you're delivering this sort of crap.
Have you ever tried picking with a machine that doesn't have a sorter and then running it through a sorting machine in the winery?
You know, we still put everything through a destemmer, but that's just because of how our processing line is set up. Yeah. You know, we don't take out the destemmer and just go straight in. So we got a lot of this stuff out. You know, what we didn't like is all the leaf fragments and the raisined clusters and just everything, you know. But we can clean this up, you know. Yeah. I think doing the way the selective process works does a better job than what our destemmers will do, just because of the way that it processes. But, you know, that's, I think, the Rolls Royce of machine harvester is the Pellenc selective process. The next best that we've had experience with is the Gregoire with a CleanTech on board. And that's essentially got like a destemmer on board. One of the things that was also mentioned earlier is that by Martin is that we have, you know, people who have clips, metal hardware in their vineyard. A lot of that will get kicked out by the onboard sorting. It won't get kicked out. I mean, some of it will get picked up by magnets on these non-sorting harvesters, but we get a lot of it come through when harvesters don't have onboard sorting, and I get a lot of verbally abused every time a piece of metal jams one of our winemakers' pumps because it stops their whole operation. You know, there's 6 guys that are processing are all of a sudden standing around for our maintenance guy to come and take the machine apart, take the piece of metal out, put it back together, set it all back up and go. And it's a lot of downtime. And people standing around going, you know, what do I do? But it's also, you know, it's damaging the pump. Every time it does more damage, so that we have to do more maintenance on it. But we don't have as many issues when it goes through sorting. That's it. Thank you, the Rogue Valley Winegrowers Association.